This time on the Watchers of Tomorrow, Law and Order, Starbase Command.
Dum dum. Hello, everybody. My name is Kepo, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this is the sci-fi critique review whatever show where apparently we're watching courtroom dramas now.
Yep. Wait a moment, courtroom drama.
Yeah. According to some interviews that I watched with the cast, this is courtroom drama at its best.
Well, I guess we'll find out if that's true or not.
Yeah. Makes me not want to see it at its worst. There's a... Yes, we are in Star Trek Original Series episode titled Court Martial.
I wonder if this is going to be a hearing for custody of a small child or... Wait a moment. That doesn't make any sense.
No, where are you going with that joke, Izix?
Is it family court? What? Oh, okay, yes.
That one got away from you pretty fast there.
Yes. It's like, what's something highly divergent from a court martial? So something involving like families, custody hearings. Okay, where am I? I don't know where I'm going with this. Oh no, abort!
I don't know. They talk about this like it's something everyone knows, and I think it is something most people know. But just to cover our bases, the court martial is a special kind of court hearing that they do in the military.
Yes.
When someone in the military really screws up, they kind of convene a trial of high-ranking military officials to preside over this courtroom thing. It's very similar to kind of the United States normal judiciary court system, but it's distinctly military.
Yes, so, the people that preside over it are military officers, usually of a higher rank than the accused. And there's, the rules of evidence are a certain way and all that sort of stuff.
They don't really go into that much in this episode. They don't explain what's happening even a little bit.
Nope.
So it assumes a passing familiarity that I wanted to make sure everyone has.
And I'd suspect that given the prevalence of TV in that sort of era, the notion of a court martial was perhaps not too, a fairly familiar sort of thing. Is because a lot of sort of military-related dramas and movies and things like that.
Yeah.
Post World War II and all that.
Yeah, I think it's not that out there. Like, courtroom dramas weren't uncommon in this period of television history. This episode was written by Don Maskowitz. Who I don't think we've seen up before. I don't think he's going to show up again.
And hello, Don. Goodbye, Don.
Yes, he didn't really write anything particularly of note you might have heard of. He won a couple of minor awards. I think his best known thing was a adapted screenplay for something called I Want to Live, which was aired in 1958.
Can't say I've ever heard of that.
Yes, neither do I. And he also did some kind of mini-series adaptation of President John F. Kennedy's life based on a book series.
That's pretty cool.
We've got Elijah Cook as Samuel T. Cogley, who's one of the lawyers. He's been in a lot of things. I think you might kind of recognize him if you've seen him around, because he's been in several kind of cop drama things, and he was in the original House on Haunted Hill movie.
Spooky.
Yeah, which they just remade again as that Netflix series.
Been hearing about that.
And Rosemary's Baby. So he was in some horror movies things. He was in the Maltese Falcon. So you've seen this guy around a little bit. He looks familiar, even if you haven't watched many of these movies from that era.
And he was also in Blackula.
Really?
Yeah.
We've got Percy Rodriguez as Commander Stone. He's also been in a few things. So we've got some people who have been around in this series.
Yes, though in Percy's case, he didn't make it to Star Trek The Next Generation, but he was in a different series that was also The Next Generation, Roots.
Oh.
Didn't know there was a Next Generation to Roots.
No, man, me neither. Yeah, he's been around in a lot of things from that era as well. We have Richard Webb as Ben Finney.
Mm-hmm.
who's also been in a few things. I don't think anything particularly notable, but he's another one of those guys that you see around in this era.
Yes. Sort of, general TV actor that pops up places.
Yeah, those are the main people. There's another lawyer, but she has not really appeared in much since, apparently.
Joan
because
Shaw.
Yeah, she doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
Joan Marshall as Shaw.
Yeah, Joan Marshall as Shaw, who I liked her in this. She was fine, but apparently she's unnotable according to Wikipedia TV history.
Well, in my sources, she was in a few things, but sort of more small parts here and there usually. Like she was in an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Oh yes, Twilight Zone. It's interesting how even in this period, like sci-fi TV actors just seem to be in all the sci-fi TV shows.
Yep. It's like, wait a moment, I recognize that voice, that face. Is that Claudia Christian again?
Oh, okay. Let's get through this because this should be hopefully a short synopsis because very little actually occurs in this episode, which is usually the prelude to me talking about the episode for 2 hours.
Well, that's okay. It gives us a lot of material that we can sort through, and you do most of the editing there, so mostly you sort through it.
Yeah, I'm just making everything harder on myself. We begin with the captain's log. The Enterprise has been through an ion storm in which a crewman has died, and this apparently is more important than every other time we've seen a crewman die on this show, because now Kirk has to kind of answer to someone for it.
Yeah, I guess Starfleet's like, well, maybe we should like reel him in a little bit more and like have him like give reports on every time someone dies, just to make sure everything's legit here, because he seems to have a high body count on the ship.
Yeah, he does. We are introduced to Commodore Stone, who is presiding over this little kind of bit of busy bureaucratic work as Kirk kind of is rereading the transcript of his reports on what happened in the ion storm as he and Stone wait for Spock to arrive with the computer readings of the event. Mm-hmm. Kirk laments that he had to jettison something called an ion pod that contained Lieutenant Commander Finney.
Uh-oh.
But he says that he was at red alert status and there was nothing else that could be done in the state of emergency. Spock arrives with computer transcripts, and before they can view them, Sailor Moon runs into the room.
She's rather irate, Sailor Moon, by the way. So
she begins yelling at Kirk for killing her father. This is actually Finney's daughter, Jamie. She is in this ridiculous schoolgirl outfit.
Yes.
It is silver. It has a silver, like a blue silver skirt. And then it's sort of a t-shirt looking thing with like a printed pattern on it that kind of looks like the neckerchief and other things that you might wear in this kind of school uniform. But instead of actually wearing any of it, it's just kind of screen printed onto her shirt.
You see, it's retro style. We used to have this thing where we had these neckerchiefs and we would just sort of have it, an impression of it now on our shirts.
Yeah, it's a very weird outfit.
I guess this is sort of maybe an example of kids and their weird outfits these days, just in the future.
Yeah, I think so. It's distinct. I'll give it that. It's probably one of the better civilian outfits we have actually seen on this show.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't know how to do future fashion in any of the Star Treks. Like, this isn't even an original series problem. I have never seen them do civilian fashion well in any Star Trek. Spock escorts the irate girl out of the room as Stone examines the computer transcripts and is shocked to discover that the ion pod was in fact not jettisoned at red alert as Kirk has claimed, but instead was jettisoned when the ship was at yellow alert. And Kirk has now committed perjury, which could warrant a general court-martial.
Oh, this seems serious. Title sequence.
Yes. But of course, since this is very serious, Kirk and McCoy go to the Starbase's bar.
Of course. What else would you do?
Kirk gets in kind of an irate fight with people who were friends of Finney, who are also blaming him for the guy's death. Kirk gets really irreverent about having killed someone many, many times.
Yep.
Just like, hey, you killed our friend. It's like, well, I don't have to listen to you. And then he runs off.
It's like, I'm the captain. Bye.
McCoy stays behind to flirt with a woman. This is Shaw, who apparently is old friends with Kirk.
Yes. And he's like, you just had the great James T. Kirk walk by you, and she's like, yeah, I know.
Which is just the weirdest way to like. He just walks up, and is like, yeah, that was James T. Kirk. I'm friends with Kirk. Want to touch me?
Of course, we find out later that she and Kirk like knew each other, and it's maybe a little weird that Kirk just sort of storms off and ignores her like that.
Yeah,
so.
Well, he's just so upset that people are upset that he killed someone. He's not even trying to deny that like this person's death is his fault. He just, it was unavoidable to save the rest of the ship, which, you can discuss. But he still definitely admits that this guy's death was his responsibility.
Yeah.
And he's still really upset anytime someone mentions it.
It's also, this is sort of starting to play up that, Kirk considered Finney a friend, but, how deep of a friendship, that was in the present tense is kind of up for debate later. But, so, maybe it's sort of like a reflection of, I lost a good friend. I'm trying to look strong and be Mr. Manly Man here, but I'm going to go pout now, so.
Maybe. But back in Stone's office, Kirk is explaining his friendship with Finney. They had been close friends for years. In fact, Finney's daughter, Jamie, is named after Kirk.
Coincidence? No, actually.
When they served together as younger officers, Kirk found that Finney had mistakenly left open a circuit that was connected to the ship's atomic pile that could have destroyed the entire ship.
Well, that seemed like a bit of negligence on his part.
A little bit. Kirk properly logged the mistake, and Finney blames this for him being passed over for promotion several times.
So, Kirk, you did your job, and then Finney used that as an excuse for not getting things together, I guess?
Yeah, Finney resents Kirk for not being corrupt and not reporting his mistake on duty, apparently.
This Finney guy kind of sound like a jerk face.
A little bit. But apparently this corruption is not uncommon because Stone tells Kirk that since he's a super special awesome starship captain, it would be embarrassing to the Federation to court-martial him. So he offers to drop the court-martial charges if Kirk agrees to give up command and take an office job.
Stone, I'm not sure you want to be doing this sort of thing when this is all about like the truth and justice here.
It's not about the truth and justice. It's about not embarrassing Starfleet, which this is a super corrupt organization that we're being introduced to here.
This far future Federation that's supposed to be our ideal, maybe not. It's full of corruption and everyone's sort of ignoring everyone's faults.
Kirk is angered not at the corruption, but at the fact that this would mean he has to take the blame for something he knows he didn't do, and he demands that he stand trial.
Well, I guess it's maybe not the right way to go about getting to this, inevitable conclusion here, but it is a way to avoid the corruption. So good, Kirk?
I guess, but he's not upset about the corruption. He's upset but I didn't do anything wrong.
So close.
Kirk returns to the bar where he finds Shaw. They awkward flirt for a bit because they still can't write flirting on this show.
Yes.
But the topic of conversation keeps going back to his impending court-martial. She talks about how Kirk is not an ordinary man, but a starship captain, and now they're going to make an example of him.
So I guess that embarrassing the Federation thing was maybe Stone being aware that there was someone who was, that would basically be on the tribunal, that would basically be pushing to basically hang Kirk any way they could.
Yes. Kirk asks if maybe she could be his defense attorney because apparently she is a lawyer, but she refuses, eventually revealing that she is in fact going to be the prosecution.
Wait a moment. She's basically explaining the prosecution's game plan to Kirk, around the same time that she's revealing that she's also the person running the prosecution.
Yeah.
I think this might be a massive ethics violation.
Something here sounds like a conflict of interest to me.
Yes. There's also that whole Kirk knows this lady from, a few years back, and they seem a bit more than friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kirk returns to his room and finds it filled with old books.
Huh. I guess they finally, the library people finally caught up with him. Oh, no.
Cogley, Kirk's defense attorney, introduces himself. Mm-hmm. When Kirk asks why his room is filled with books, Cogley explains that while he has a computer right there in the room with him that has all of the same information presented in the same way but better organized, he says that the books give him a special connection to the law and the men who made it, because of course it's always men.
Yeah.
And we get the idea that Cogley really does not trust or like computers.
Correct. Might be a theme.
Perhaps. It might be. It probably isn't, but it might be.
And yes, I'm also going to point out, the law books that he has there are like really super old looking, even by like 60s sort of standards here.
Yeah, apparently they're still publishing law books in like old looking leather bound editions.
Yes.
Back in the courtroom now, the court-martial begins. They spend this long time asking Kirk if he's okay with all the people who are like being his judge and his attorney and whatnot, and Kirk's like, yes, I'm fine, everyone's fine. But they never once mention that Shaw is a conflict of interest and should definitely recuse herself.
Yes, she shouldn't be there at all, but I guess Kirk saying that he's cool with this is him sort of being more subtle about the whole corruption thing than Stone was. It's like, yes, have this person who likes me prosecute me. I'm cool with it. I have no complaints.
They never explain this. We're probably going to do some compare and contrast of court stuff later on, and they never explain why it's okay for her to be doing this. Also, she shows up out of nowhere as a new character to be doing this, so they put this in here explicitly for some reason.
Yeah.
Shaw calls Spock as a computer expert. He confirms that while the computer could have malfunctioned to cause this, misattribution of the facts or whatever, he found no problems with the Enterprise computer. But he goes on to say that despite what the computer says, he knows Kirk could not have jettisoned the pod before the red alert because he has some sort of nonsensical logic explanation about how he knows Kirk, and Kirk could not go against his nature.
So in some ways, you could, argue that Spock's trying, as Spock does in the show, I've have these pieces of evidence and I've constructed this logical, framework to reach this conclusion. I know Kirk well enough to know what his behavior will be like, but this also, kind of ignores that whole human error thing that, humans are supposed to be doing, but Vulcans aren't. But Spock's apparently sort of just glossing that over entirely.
Yeah, well, here's the thing that bugged me is the way that they frame it as a logic statement. Mm-hmm. They say the witness shouldn't speculate, and he says this is not speculation. I know what Kirk would do. And he says, if I drop a hammer on a planet with gravity, I don't need to observe the hammer falling to know that it hit the ground. It's yes, you do. Otherwise, you're speculating.
Yep.
It might be an informed speculation, but unless you actually observed that hammer falling, you are making a speculative statement about the fact that it did so.
And it's, the assumption is that nothing's going to happen to prevent the the object from hitting the ground. There's not going to be someone reaching over and grabbing it, preventing it from doing such. There's not going to be some sort of, sort of like an explosion, perhaps, that sends the object flying into space. There's not some sort of weird shift in the gravitational fields locally, so that it actually flies away from the planet.
Yeah, it's just this is not logic. If you did not directly observe the thing happening, you are only surmising that it did happen based on available evidence. But you cannot be certain that it happened.
It's an educated guess, and sometimes it's all you can have. But if you're trying to get to the absolute facts and truth of a matter, then you can't really kind of jump there.
Yes. Kirk's lawyer refuses to cross-examine Spock, and we get the next witness, who is an ensign we've not seen before, who is identified as the Enterprise's personnel officer.
I don't think she has a name.
No, she doesn't.
In my notes, I put her down as Ensign doesn't have a name.
She confirms all the stuff that we already know about Finney and the open circuit thing, and that's about all she's there for.
Yeah.
Cogley again refuses cross-examination.
I'm seeing there's maybe a problem here with your lawyer, Kirk.
Yeah, a little bit.
He doesn't seem very good. He's not even going through the motions of, probing the reliability of their expertise.
Yeah.
Not, anything like that.
He's not even saying anything at all, basically.
Yeah. He's just sort of there.
McCoy is called to the stand as an expert in space psychology. We're still doing this. We're still just putting the word space in front of things.
So can I be a master of space gardening?
Yes.
Cool. By the way, I think we should also point out that before each witness, there's a computer that's basically giving the general bio of the various folks here, and it's kind of a long, drawn-out process, and giving like awards for this, awards for that, and apparently, like Spock was something involving like the Vulcan Scientific Legion of Honor.
Yeah.
And then I think someone else is also a Legion of Honor of some sort.
Yeah, every single one of them has like 15 awards they have to read out before they can talk.
Yep.
That's most of this episode is reading out inconsequential stuff that takes 20 minutes.
Yep. Filler.
So Shaw asks McCoy a really weird series of questions about resentment. She eventually gets McCoy to confirm that maybe, theoretically, on some level, it's possible that because Finney resented Kirk for not being promoted, Kirk might resent Finney because he resents being resented.
This seems like a bit of speculation.
Mm-hmm. Even though McCoy repeatedly says that, yeah, well, that's something that could possibly happen between two people, maybe, sort of, kind of, maybe. Kirk didn't have those feelings towards Finney. As the person who's apparently in charge of the ship's psychology, you would think he would know, since they brought him up as an expert on psychology, and this is someone that he serves and is responsible for the health and mental care of. But apparently we're just ignoring that.
Yeah, this is, basically, here, did you, jump to this conclusion, please? I would like not to, but I guess I have to. As opposed to asking McCoy, it's like, does Kirk ever talk about Finney? Has he ever talked about it before the incident? What has his general reaction been to his death, et cetera, et cetera?
Instead of poking the billions of holes you could poke in this argument,
Mm-hmm.
Cogley refuses cross-examination and says he's just standing around waiting for them to finally call Kirk to the stand as the main event.
So you're basically just conceding everything in the vain hope that Kirk is just going to be that awesome to pull this out somehow.
Yep. The computer spends about 10 minutes reading off Kirk's service record, including a long list of commendations.
Mm-hmm. There's a little exchange between the lawyers. It's like, can we just cut to the chase from Shaw, and Cog's like, nope. And then he's like, eventually cuts it off. It's okay, that's enough. I think they get the point.
Cogley asks if Kirk jettisoned the pod after calling Red Alert. Kirk says yes, and then talks about how great he is for a little while, and says that even though it killed someone, he'd still do it exactly the same way again because it meant he saved the ship.
No, it's I guess the safety of the ship is paramount.
Yeah, works out.
And I guess it's all still coming down to the matter of, has Kirk, lied about the exact conditions and situations that was going on.
Shaw shows us the computer records of what happened, which is just a visual recording, apparently, of what happened on the bridge.
Hey, guess what we're doing again?
Is it a screen within a screen?
Yeah, we're watching Star Trek on Star Trek.
On the view screen, we see the bridge of the Enterprise as it enters the ion storm. Everyone jostles around a bit. Mm-hmm. Kirk orders Finney into the pod. We never know what this pod is and why it is necessary.
Yeah, it's just a thing that exists.
Yeah.
Let's keep an eye out if it pops up again at any time.
Yeah. The view changes so that we can see the control panel on Kirk's chair. He hits the button that says alert, and it has a little yellow light to it. Presumably, this is yellow alert.
Yes.
He tells Finney to get ready to leave the pod because they are going to need to get out of there. He then pushes the eject pod button, which is immediately below the two alert buttons.
And by the way, there's no other, there's like two other buttons, but they're not marked with anything.
Yeah, this panel has 5 buttons on it. The first 2 are labeled alert in this little sticky label maker thing. It's like one of those things you get out of a label maker. They're both labeled alert. One has a yellow light and one has a red light. Then under that is jettison pod with a little green light, and then 2 completely blank buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, if you have the kill someone button, wouldn't you want to, like, put it at the bottom and have those 2 blank buttons in the middle? Also, why is there a kill someone button? And why is it right below? Why does the captain need to kill someone in this pod often enough that it is deemed necessary to be one of the 3 functioning buttons that is attached to his chair?
So I guess we've commented from time to time about the competency level of the crew. Perhaps it's just sort of a general principle of Starfleet, all the way down to like the people that build the ship.
Yeah, well, they talk often in this episode about how awesome Star Trek captains have to be. Yes. And how they have to be these perfect, ideal human beings that never make a mistake because every one of their decisions could cost the lives of everyone on their ship. So it seems like they've just decided that they're going to give the captain these things that could basically instantly destroy the ship. I'm sure on the other chair, on the other arm of the chair, he has a button that just says blow up ship. And it's just expected that he will never ever push it because he is an infallible god being.
Yes, in fact, there's 2 buttons on that side. One is self-destruct, one of them self-destruct times 2.
Back in Kirk's room, Cogley suggests that they're screwed because Kirk never told him that they had this computer evidence that the entire case is based on.
Yeah. So there's this thing called discovery that happens in trials. And I'm assuming that that's part of the far future jurisprudence of the Federation in some degree or other. That you can't just sort of have suddenly surprise evidence that pops out of nowhere, unless it's a surprise to both lawyers. If someone has a piece of evidence, they need to make the other side aware of it so that they can put together a valid case in order to answer. It's like, okay, is this evidence legit, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's sort of to call into question if they don't think it is, or if it is totally legit. Maybe it's like, well, maybe we should just take a guilty plea and have it done with.
Yeah, this whole thing is weird because Kirk now has a weird crisis about his abilities. Because he's like, I'm sure that I called red alert before I hit that button, but I just saw the computer tell me that I didn't, even though the entire conceit of the episode is that the computer told me I did something that I didn't do. But now that the computer has told me I did something that I didn't do, I'm all confused.
Yeah. Kirk, were you not paying attention?
Spock calls to tell Kirk that they've found nothing wrong with the computers, again. And Kirk jokes that maybe Spock will be able to beat his next captain at chess, which gives Spock an idea.
Chess? Maybe playing chess will be a more worthwhile time than trying to figure out all this mess.
Probably. Jamie, the young girl from earlier, enters, and all of a sudden doesn't blame Kirk for her father's death anymore, and in fact, knows that they were close friends and wants Kirk to be okay. This weird sudden change of feeling seems to give Cogley an idea, but it's never really followed through on.
Yeah. I have things to do. Plans to get working. Because this reaction from him almost seems like it's part of like an artifact from a rewrite or something like that. Honestly.
Yeah. It seems like they're setting up that she now knows something about Kirk being innocent, and now she's like, oh no, I don't want you to be punished because I know you're innocent, but I can't just say that for some reason. But then, spoiler alert, I guess, they never come back to it at all.
Nope. In fact, when I saw this bit, it's like, wait, maybe she's like suddenly aware that if he's found like guilty, they're just going to murder him or something like that. So she's like kind of starting to feel guilty about that, and wants to maybe speak on his behalf, and it'll all get sort of settled in a well, you did technically do a bad, but we have character witnesses that basically say that maybe this was a minor error, but you're not a bad person, so we're going to give you a slap on the wrist and just have it be that.
Yeah, but they're just not doing anything with this character. Is pointless, in fact.
Yes.
So now back on the ship, Spock is playing chess against the computer, which is a really old interface where he has to yell out his move, and the computer yells out its move, and he has to physically move the pieces on the board himself.
Yep.
McCoy
calls him
enters.
cold-blooded.
Yeah, McCoy enters and as like, I had to see it to believe it that Kirk's about to get his professional head chopped off and you're up here playing chess.
You cold-blooded bastard.
But Spock says, yeah, but I've won 4 games against the computer. And McCoy goes, oh my God, 4 games? That means something. That's important.
That's impossible.
Spock explains that because the computer is infallible, he should only ever be able to achieve a draw. But instead, he's now beaten the computer 5 times.
Huh. Wait a moment. Are you saying that the computer has grown a human-like intelligence and is thus is fallible like the rest of us?
Maybe. Back in the courtroom, Cogley takes this new evidence that something is wrong with the computer and maybe it has been reprogrammed as a last-minute reprieve, and he demands that everyone go up to the ship so that he can demonstrate something to them.
And Shaw is like, oh, this is just theatrics. This is a means to extend the trial, whatever. But
yeah, but then Cogley makes this really weird speech about how if they trust the computer evidence, they're basically making the computer a witness that they're not allowed to cross-examine.
Yes.
And they're giving the computer more rights than a man.
So didn't we have Spock in here earlier, the computer expert, who basically checked the computer and already did the cross-examination already?
Yeah, and you kind of gave up your chance to cross-examine the computer expert about the computer. But no, yell and scream about how you don't trust the computer video.
Oh, man. This guy.
On the ship, Cogley asks Spock about what they did when they lost Finney. Spock says that they started a search of the surrounding area to try to find him in the jettisoned pod. But Cogley says that their emergency search assumes that the person they're looking for wants to be found. Dun,
you mean
dun.
he committed suicide?
I guess. They make this big deal about how they can turn on the computer's sound sensors all over the ship, and they can amplify them enough that they can hear everyone's heartbeat.
That's kind of creepy, but cool.
Yeah, so they have this weird cacophonous heart-beating sound going on. So Kirk explains to everyone that that's the heartbeat of everyone on board the ship. They have asked 90% of the ship to leave, so they just have the people in the bridge and one guy working the transporter.
Yes.
And now, McCoy is going to use his weird magic noise cancellation device to blank out everyone's heartbeats in turn. In this slow, laborious process where he has to walk up to everyone, do a little thingy with his little microphone-looking doodah, and that takes their heartbeat out of the thing. And once he finishes doing this to everyone's heart, they still hear one.
Dun, dun, dun!
And they all go, oh my God, it's Finney, he's alive!
So he wasn't dead after all.
This heartbeat is coming from somewhere near engineering, and Kirk decides that he has to go take care of this all by himself for some reason.
Because Kirk is the Starfleet captain, and captains are amazing and can do anything.
Yep. Kirk wanders around the engine room a bit until Finney pops up behind him and holds a gun to his back.
Uh-oh, he's gonna get shot.
Finney makes some crazy TV person talk about how Kirk ruined his life by reporting that mistake he made, and that he needs to sabotage Kirk's ship to destroy it with their circuits or something. He's like taking away the energy and now their orbit's going to decay.
Yep. Slowly spiraling in. Very, very, very quickly.
Yeah, so this is a bit that doesn't make sense because like 5 minutes ago when they were on the bridge, they said like, we're sending everyone back down to the planet. Like we're clearing the ship. And one of them goes like, oh, wait, what about your engineering staff to keep the engines running? And they say, oh, it's fine. We're in an orbit. It's going to be a long time before our orbit decays, so we can just let the ship coast. Then here, Finney has sabotaged the circuits or something, and now the ship is suddenly going to crash.
So I think it might be important to inform the listeners a bit about how orbits around a planet kind of work. So if you were in just empty space, you would be able to conceivably orbit forever if you set it up properly. The problem is near a planet there's this stuff called the upper atmosphere that actually extends up quite a long ways, and it's like it expands and contracts depending on if you're on the day side or the night side. and various other conditions that can sort of have it actually come up, and so you actually get things in orbit that are slowly slowed down by the very, very tenuous gas that ends up running into your path there. And so things like the International Space Station, which are very, very large, occasionally need a little bit of boost to keep them in orbit. And most satellites are small enough that's not really much of a problem. But it's sort of something the size of the Enterprise, you should be able to maintain an orbit, without engine power at all, conceivably for months.
But apparently the way orbits work on Star Trek, you have to continuously pump power into it, otherwise you're going to fall out of the sky.
Yeah, what?
And also, so we keep stuff in lower Earth orbit because we have to keep sending stuff up to it. Mm-hmm. The Enterprise is coming to these places from space.
Yes.
They could do a parking orbit that should be well outside of the upper atmosphere and not slow down.
Yeah, conceivably they could, have a high orbit that keeps them in space for, billions of years and not have any problem.
Yeah, but apparently they don't do that for some reason.
No, they fly directly into the upper atmosphere, like like 30% density of for whatever gases you're dealing with, and just sort of park there instead for some reason.
Yeah, apparently, like the transporters don't go as far as we think they do. Maybe
I guess.
So Finney has sabotaged the ship, and it's making their orbit go into decay. Fine. Kirk tells him that Jamie is on board, which I wasn't paying enough attention to see, but I don't think she was.
Yeah. Cogley was like going down to the planet to pick her up and bring her up, but it never was established if she actually managed to arrive.
Yeah. So maybe he's lying about his daughter being on board, but Finney is upset about that and lets his guard down so Kirk can hit him until he falls over.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a scuffle. It's kind of silly, but it's Star Trek sort of fights. So
yep. Kirk fixes the wires or whatever it is that's wrong with the ship, makes sure that their orbit's okay, goes to the bridge, kisses Shaw, sits down, makes a sexist joke. The end. Yep.
Everything turned out okay, and Finney, I guess, goes to jail.
Yep. Finney has a good point in this, actually, because he has this thing of I have a spotless service record except for this one mistake that you reported, and now I've been passed over for promotion for years because of that, other than my exemplary spotless service record everywhere else. So if Star Trek is if Starfleet is that picky, where yes. Oh, you made a single mistake, your career is over. I kind of understand him having this kind of breakdown.
Yeah, it's your levels of perfection are such that one mistake over years and years and years in service is insufficient to get anywhere. So yeah, screw that noise.
Yeah, I think the mistake thing. I think some of this, I was really struggling. Nothing happens in this episode. They don't really try to make a point. It's very bad courtroom drama. Everything just kind of works out for no reason. Going into this, that things happened the way Kirk said they did, because that's how they write this show.
Yeah, Kirk is infallible,
So you're basically just waiting for them to reveal why the computer messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then they reveal why the computer messed up, and it's exactly the thing they said earlier.
Yep.
And so really there's not much point to this entire episode.
Well, we're just kind of going through the motions here. Don't mind us.
Yeah, so I was really struggling with, I need something to talk about, because that's the whole point. We're supposed to talk about something that ties into the frickin' episode.
Yep.
And I think that it has finally happened with this episode. It is finally time for us to talk about masculinity.
How toxic is it?
It's pretty toxic. So they continuously bring up this idea. And I think that they actually kind of exemplify it in this episode with Finney and his little mistake rant.
Mm-hmm.
They keep bringing up the idea that Kirk, as the starship captain, either has to be actually infallible or has to be believed to be infallible.
Yes, and from the bit about corruption from Stone there earlier, that believe it to be infallible is maybe the more important one for Starfleet's concern.
Yeah, they have the whole thing. Like, if someone knows that a starship captain made a mistake, oh my god.
Yep. But the crazy thing is, the crew never really seems to give a crap.
Yeah. But they continuously hold up this idea that perfection is the only standard.
And so when Finney has this small blemish on his record, suddenly he is unable to make captain, despite having been in the academy at the same time as Kirk and conceivably about the same age.
Yeah, not even not make captain, but supposedly not really get promoted much at all. Like, he's where was he in here? He's lieutenant commander. Okay, so he's like one rank below captain. So I suppose he
two,
did
I think,
get
actually.
2. All right. What is lieutenant commander?
Then commander.
Then commander. Okay, so he's 2 ranks below. He's 2 ranks behind Kirk. Which, starting from the same point and not making any other particular mistakes or things, they've pretty much, his career is pretty much over from what they've said. He's like, he may as well have retired the second he made a mistake.
Yep. And so it does kind of beg the question, why didn't Finney retire at some point? If he doesn't see Starfleet as being a very good career choice going forward, why is he kept with it?
Yeah, it's just a weird one. The entire thing is framed around this idea that, like, one, Finney made a mistake and probably therefore deserved to be punished and go crazy. Because they never really say anything about, like, oh, darn, like, that was terrible how Finney's life was ruined by this thing.
Yeah,
He's just...
so there's, like, some remorse there. That'd be something.
Yeah, there's no remorse. He's barely mentioned. They say that it ruined the friendship, which is, like... He is, I guess, wrong for believing that their friendship should have counted more than Kirk's, like, duty and rule lawyering.
Well, maybe maybe Finney and Kirk and maybe all Starfleet captains and people that might become captain are actually just generally, bad at jobs and do make mistakes. It's just everyone covers for them.
It seems to be, yeah.
And then in Finney's case, everyone except Kirk is already covered for him, so he should be captain already.
And the thing is, the reason that I think this ties into some, like, toxic masculinity stuff that we have had, people have been talking a lot about recently. Something that Stone says earlier on is he used to be a starship captain, apparently. Mm-hmm. And he says that only one man in 1,000 could do what you and I do, captain a starship. Which is just this, they keep coming back to this idea that there is something inherently better about Kirk and the other captains than other people. They're just flat out better people. There's no, like, they have good training, like Starfleet trains people well or does whatever. Like, they are just inherently better people and therefore are in command.
Yeah, there's no concern about experience, no concern about, it's like, oh yeah, these captains aren't with us today because, something happened and they got killed or something like that. There's like big fight or war or something like that. It's just these elite few are just inherently better, and thus everyone should look up to us. And if they're not looking up to us properly, well, that's bad for all of us. So we need to make sure you continue to have your shine on, man.
Yeah, but the way that they're supposed to be better is this very, like, hyper masculine ideal of, like, I can do everything myself. I never make a mistake. If I do make a mistake, it was this massive problem. Like, one mistake, this thing too, like, this did cause the death of someone on the ship, so it's a fairly big thing. But the idea that he maybe made one mistake, which apparently was hitting the button one button below the button he meant to push.
Yep.
Throws him into this massive crisis. It's just like, how can I trust myself or my memory or my abilities if I made this small mistake that I didn't notice?
So I guess maybe Kirk is finally realizing, I am fallible. And that means my entire self-worth has been destroyed.
Yeah, fallibility is just so antithetical to the very existence of this masculine ideal, that the minute you are fallible, you have to become this defensive.
Yes.
This, like, I demand that you court-martial me because I will be able to prove that I am an infallible being.
Mm-hmm. I need to demonstrate my power and my wholeness here.
And the entire way that they structure the, like, command structure on this show is so based around this idea. Because you even have this, it is unrealistic for a military organization to not have these redundant checks and systems in place that they show in this scenario. Because if you can't jettison this pod thing without it being a genuine emergency, they keep saying, like, you weren't in an emergency status when you jettisoned this. You weren't at your red alert status. The captain shouldn't be pushing buttons.
Correct.
Like, the captain should tell other people what to do, and then they do it. And that is a secondary check system. Like, he says, like, jettison the pod, and then, the person sitting at the controls goes, are you sure you want to jettison the pod? We're at yellow alert.
Yes. It's like, oh yeah, we should go to red alert first, and then jettison the pod. Finny, I guess get out of the pod, please.
Yeah, so it makes no sense that you would have these weird designated command functions that the captain can unilaterally do.
Yeah, I guess in this case, given this culture of toxic masculinity here, you got this situation where the assumption is that your captains are going to be perfect, and the people designing the ship also believe that, rightly or wrongly, or at least need to demonstrate through their designs that they are going to follow through this with the party line there. And so they design systems where the captain, is assumed to be infallible.
Yeah, and obviously we don't believe that this is, like, really how the engineering works in this world, but the fact that that is the inference that you can make here really says something about the way they're framing the show around the supposed infallibility of Kirk as a leader.
So, yeah.
And then the kind of antagonist of this episode, Finney, made a mistake. And that was his entire thing. He made a mistake, and he has become this, he's gotten to a point where he needs to frame Kirk of making a mistake.
Yes, he goes full villainous and needs to, project his flaw onto somebody else to make them suffer the same way he does.
Yeah, which is just...
And then maybe murder him.
One mistake has gotten you to this point, and framing someone else of one mistake will also ruin them.
And somehow redemption.
Like, the entire stakes of this show are, you have made a mistake. The computer says you made a mistake, and this is, like, going to completely ruin everything for you.
It's a bad day, guys. I guess we should probably point out, just if to make it doubly obvious, that it's okay to make mistakes, guys. Like, be human.
Yeah, they've done
that's how you learn.
In earlier episodes too. Like, not only is it not okay to make mistakes, which of course everyone's going to. Not only is it all right, and it's a necessary part of a learning process, like, it is 100% unavoidable. So not building that into your thinking is in itself a mistake.
Yes. So Starfleet has in total made a mistake in assuming that their captains are going to be infallible super beings.
Yeah, the fact that they even say, like, every day you have to make 100 decisions and every one of them has to be right, otherwise your entire crew dies.
Yes.
That's just stupid. If you decide wrong on the lunch menu, everyone on the crew dies.
Oh no, we're all allergic to ketchup today.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes no sense, and they're bending over backwards so much every time they need to show Kirk is special. To just be like, he's definitely infallible. Like, you can't even believe in this episode that he made a mistake, even for a second. The way they've framed everything is just like, well, when are we going to find out the computer was wrong? Because Kirk can't be.
So with the computer, being weird like it is in this episode, and just sort of how it kind of comes together, I suddenly am hit with the idea that maybe the computer being beaten by Spock was an unrelated malfunction.
Well, they suggest that it's been reprogrammed.
Yes.
Which would, I guess, affect all of its systems somehow. But they also suggest that these computers are almost impossible to program. Like they've mentioned a few times before that Spock is basically the only person on the ship who can do it.
Yes. And in this episode, I think they mentioned that Spock, Kirk, and Finney specifically could be the ones who do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because Finney was like a records officer or something.
Yes. Yeah, he was the records officer as opposed to the personnel officer who still doesn't have a name.
Yeah. So, like, I don't understand. I get they still have this mistrust of technology thing going on in the 60s, which to a certain extent we still have today. We've just kind of shifted it onto what technology we mistrust.
Yes. So it's now more of the genetic engineered crops as opposed to your home computer.
Yeah. Like your home computer, you basically trust. Your like social media, you don't trust. Your phone, you trust, but of course it's ruining society. Your genetic engineering, you don't trust, even though that's arguably an older technology than computers. But they keep talking about how they're elevating the rights of the computer over the individual. This has come up a couple times. That they're like, by trusting a machine, they are elevating the machine over the human, which again, like if we look at the Conscience of the King episode, where Kirk has the computer run a voice analysis on this guy to try to identify him, and then he doesn't trust the voice analysis because he has to feel it in his gut.
Yes.
It is again just saying that like a person is more infallible than the machine is.
Yes, human beings are perfect, especially Kirk, but human beings in general.
Yeah. So the fact that you are trusting a computer, the fact that you are trusting this machine, like, to show you a video is naive.
Yes.
Which apparently it is, because the only possible way that we could have been shown the video that we were shown is if it is a complete fabrication of the computer. If instead of the computer actually taking a recording of what happens on the bridge, it takes the information that it has about when certain commands were input into the system and then recreates a video based on that information.
Yeah.
Which, that's a really dumb system.
Maybe the command chair doesn't even have buttons for this stuff.
Yeah. Basically, you set up the logging system on your ship very badly. And I would agree that you shouldn't trust a system that is set up this badly. But not because you are elevating it over a person. It's because you did not build it in a way where it can be trustworthy.
Yes. I think this goes back to some of the stuff we brought up in early adventures here, that computer systems are only as flawless as the people that make them.
Yeah, well, they've abstracted it to such a point in this show. They've basically said that instead of just setting up some form of video recorder on the bridge that would just videotape what is happening.
Yes, record without edits.
Yeah. They instead of having it record what's going on, the computer has to create a reconstruction based on available input data.
Why would you do this?
Also, apparently, your fallback, this should be like your fallback ineditable black box system.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently they're not taking it from that. They're taking it from the general computer that any idiot has access to.
Including the idiot who is behind all this.
Yeah. But I think I've gone on about how badly this was demonstrated for now. You wanted to contrast this to other Star Trek court dramas, I believe.
Yes. Court dramas show up a number of times in Star Trek in the various forms. Got Kirk getting sort of demoted and things like that in the Voyage Home, and there's the Klingon court adventure in the undiscovered country. Then you also got the TNG episode, the Drumhead, when the best episodes perhaps all of Star Trek, which might have a interesting sort of parallel going on here. No, sorry, I'm thinking of a different one. Measure of the Man is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that one. Those Drumhead's pretty good too.
I was really thinking of Measure of a Man, which is it's one of the best Next Generation episodes. Mm-hmm. It is a courtroom drama where they need to prove whether or not Lieutenant Commander Data counts as a sentient living being who can make his own decisions.
Yes. Is this a machine or a person?
And they did some somewhat similar stuff with it.
Yes.
Because when they introduced Shaw as someone who with a definite conflict of interest to prosecuting this case,
mm-hmm.
It reminded me
of Kirk and friendship and lots more.
They've done this 2 or 3 times on Next Gen. They have someone with a conflict of interest in the court to build drama, basically. But they explain why. So in Measure of a Man, the person who wants to take Data apart is trying to prove he's just a machine and doesn't deserve rights. He makes Commander Riker be the prosecuting attorney, and he does this to screw with the case specifically. Mm-hmm. It is his motivation. It's I can use this legal loophole to make you prosecute your friend, and if I don't feel like you're doing it to the best of your ability, it will invalidate the court, and I will just get to win.
Yes. So if you're not going to bring your A game, well, then I just sort of win anyway, and, there might be appeals or something like that, but by then Data will already be disassembled. So
it's calculated in this. It's calculated and it's explained.
Yes. As opposed to, here's your friend, they're just going to be attacking you now. Have fun.
And they use it to further the character interaction and drama of the episode. Because Riker feels really bad about it. They have this great scene in Measure of a Man where Riker's doing research and he discovers the crux of his argument. He discovers this thing that we don't find out till later in the episode, but he finds it and he just smiles. He's doing his job. He's digging through the research. He finds the thing and he's just really excited that he's found this thing that can win his argument. And then it takes him a second to remember that means he's doomed his friend, and then he just gets really depressed after.
Damn it, I have to do this thing.
Yeah, it's this great turnaround scene. It's just he's so in his role as prosecutor that for a second he forgets what winning actually means, and then when he realizes it, he's devastated.
Yeah, and this is a really great episode for both Riker and Data, because you get to know both how they tick and sort of how they interact a lot more. And in a very, very high-stakes game.
Yeah, it is an amazingly done episode. It's kind of one of the high points of science fiction writing in all of the Star Treks. Yes. And it's probably unfair to compare other episodes to it so much.
But we're doing it anyway.
Yeah. Well, when you have courtroom drama to courtroom drama, that's courtroom drama done well. We know what's at stake. We know what they're arguing. We know what the consequences will be. The consequences are, in fact, very, very high. They're basically going to execute Data if they lose.
Mm-hmm.
This one, there's some kind of unspecified court-martial, they're going to take away his command, maybe. We're not really sure what the consequences of this will be.
Some nebulous bad thing will happen, and we don't actually have any stakes because we don't know what it is.
Yeah, we also don't understand what's going on.
Yes.
They keep saying, there was an ion storm. We had to put this guy in the ion pod, and then we had to jettison the ion pod. What is any of those words?
Yeah, the mechanics of the ion pod are kind of a mystery, honestly, because it's sort of like, okay, is this a special sensor dome that you have somewhere? If you have to eject it just at some point during an ion storm, just because it gets really bad at some point, then you're going to no longer have its crazy sensor sweep. So you're just going to be flying blind then. So
yeah, it's somehow both necessary for the successful navigation of an ion storm, but also inherently dangerous to keep around during an ion storm.
Yes. So it's sort of
which
both great thing and terrible thing, and maybe let's just design a better system.
I'll buy that that's necessary, but tell me why.
Yes,
I've had to work this out through the contextual clues of watching this episode a couple times, how this thing is meant to work and what it does. And I've gotten so far as it is somehow necessary for navigation, but also bad.
Yes.
And I had to work through that. Why don't they just go like, of course, as we all know, you have to do whatever with an ion pod, but also it emits ion pod radiation. So you can't keep it on for too long.
So I think during the trial section, instead of the long computer, screeching out everybody's bios here, they have maybe a witness come in that explains what an ion pod's all about. That would be great. Give us some exposition. You're in a trial. That's like half of what the point of trials are. Actually, I'd say actually much more than that, is to present information so that the people that are making a decision about the case, in this case the tribunal of commodores and admirals, whatever it was, to have all the information they need in order to make a sound decision. But obviously, we're not getting that information because we don't know what an ion pod is.
Yeah, they don't explain anything in this episode, which is the issue. Like, fine, you can do the courtroom drama thing, but they also don't solve it in the court. They solve it by bringing in like another random bit of evidence for no reason. Yep. Just randomly turns out that this dude is alive.
Yes. Oh, Deus Ex still not dead.
Yeah, which Spock just figures out. Again, Spock just figures this out off screen, apparently.
So, wait a moment. Is Spock trying to become captain?
Maybe. He should.
Because he's pretty flawless, too.
Yeah, except we know that he's super flawed. Even when he's making flawless decisions, they're based on logic and not human emotions, so he's wrong.
Yes. Not sure what being flawless means now.
Yeah, I just don't... I can't. I don't know. There's no stakes in this episode. They don't explain what's happening. They drop that plot thread of the guy's daughter. They imply that her change of heart means that like she knows the guy's alive or she knows something sketchy is happening and now the lawyer needs to look into it. But then they just completely drop that part of the plot.
Because then Spock just kind of saves the day and figures it all out.
Yeah, which just... So it demonstrates some interesting things about the way they think about people and their interactions on this show. But overall, the episode itself is so poorly constructed. It doesn't actually have a point. It's not even trying for a point.
Yeah.
If the only thing that they could possibly be saying is... don't trust machines, which also bad because maybe they hadn't quite figured this out at this time period. I'm not sure when this change in thinking came about, but they were going off of mostly eyewitness testimony except for the computer bit. And eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those things. So if you're in a case, it's like it's good to have, but it's much better to have anything else. Because human beings are fallible. People lie. People avoid mentioning bits of information. The people can break down under cross examination. Perhaps convinced by the opposing side to disbelieve their own testimony they just gave, which makes them look like liars.
Well, just anything. The way your memory functions is a story that you are making up as you remember certain key things about what happened in the past.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just going to cite an example from this morning that I had. I walked into the living room, spent 10 minutes trying to find my coffee that I know I brought into the living room and put down on my desk, only to later figure out that I'd actually put it down on the counter in the kitchen and just thought about bringing it into the living room.
Yes. So you did put it down, just not where you
remember. And if someone had asked me, I would have been like, until I did not see the coffee on the desk, I would have told them for certain I put the coffee down in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are not a reliable narrator of events.
Yes.
And if they had not designed the computer so badly, it should be a better narrator of events.
Yes. But the computer records are easily manipulatable, and the reprogrammable computer is able to be set up to produce records that are as whoever you like.
Yeah.
So maybe the philosophy that they're trying to demonstrate is don't trust the technology that we have around us because it's been set up by crazy people.
I mean, that's not a bad... See, that wouldn't be a bad thing to mention.
Yes, that our computer scientists in this era are just, they have these weird notions that don't make any sense as far as things, and it just causes problems. We should probably get better people to do this.
That's kind of a running thing, that they continuously mistrust the machines themselves. Mm-hmm. And we do this in a lot of things. It's not just in Star Trek. We do this in real life as well, where you mistrust the machine itself instead of realizing that the reason you can't trust the machine is because it was designed badly.
Yes. Because you really can't trust the person who made it.
Yeah. You're not trusting the people who designed it, rather than not trusting the implement.
So I think the conclusion we should be coming to here is that the 23rd century computer engineers and computer scientists are not sufficiently perfect to be starship captains.
Yeah.
So I think, though, in all of this, that I would also like to draw the conversation back to another Star Trek courtroom episode, though it's not technically a trial.
Yes.
So Deep Space Nine episode, Rules of Engagement, has a lot of parallels within this particular episode. It involves Worf, who's being requested by the Klingons to get sent over to their side. Well, there's a little bit of disagreements between the Klingons and Federation at that point, and they're basically is like, you killed a bunch of people because you blew up a civilian transport ship. So you should come send them over to us, please. And there's a whole back and forth, and there's posturing and conversations and intense drama, but there's something wrong with the records. So they may have been manipulated in some fashion. And as opposed to the computers just sort of being assumed to be correct, or assumed to be something that you don't trust, it's like, no, the records have been manipulated, and so we're going to point at the people that manipulate the records, as opposed to just sort of dislike the technology, and sort of draw the focus of the story to that aspect of it, and the whole distrust going on in the situation.
Yeah, they do that several times. I'm forgetting the name of the episode now, but I was just watching a Next Generation episode where there were two. There was one where Geordi was kidnapped by Romulans,
mm-hmm.
and there was one where Worf's father was being framed for collusion with Romulans.
Oh, yes. So I'm seeing a trend here.
Yeah, and both of these episodes, they have computer records, and they're using them. They're like, mm-hmm. The computer records say everything's fine. Let's, cursory examination, the computer records seem accurate. Yes. Then something happens where they're like, this doesn't seem to make sense with what we know. Now we know what to look for in the records, and we can see that there is evidence that they have been tampered with.
Yes, that things aren't quite adding up, or there's some discrepancies here, or there's like a different timestamp on this sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's like actual investigation. One, they're not just flatly trusting or mistrusting the computer.
Yes.
And they like go with it up to the point where it stops making as much sense, and then it's like, well, now we know where to look and we can find something that's wrong.
Yes. It's like there's some sort of cross-examination going on here, Cogley.
Yeah.
There's someone asking the important questions, Mr. Lawyer Man.
Well, we have gone on about this courtroom drama for longer than the frickin' episode was at this point, so I think that it's time for the galaxy's favorite game show!
Woohoo! Hi everybody, I hope you're ready for another bit of awards here. And everyone's a winner on this game show, but some people are more award-winning than others. They might, in fact, be starship captains. We'll find out.
Yes.
Our first award, the Failure to CSI Award, is going to Commodore Stone for moving so quickly to have Kirk be seen as guilty of concluding with out independent verification the computer record is totally A-OK, man. What does he win, Geplin?
Commodore Stone wins his own court-martial for general corruption.
Oh, I think his long history of trying to make captains look awesome is finally catching up to him, Geplin. Oh. Our second award today is the Space's Ocean Award. Goes to Kirk for flying the Enterprise into a metaphor for a thunderstorm once again. What does he win?
Captain Kirk wins just have a sailboat already. If you want to write ocean stuff, put it on the ocean.
Oh, yes. Instead of this, metaphor for a thunderstorm, just go out and have some fun in the actual water. Oh. Our third award is Computers Are the Devil. And that award goes to Cogley for lugging around a massive library instead of actually just using a computer like every normal person does. How does he win, Geplin?
Cogley wins his very own Kindle, because a pocket computer that can hold all the libraries in the world would drive him crazy.
I think he might have some use from it, but I don't know. He might forget it, or perhaps lose it under his giant library of, bound tomes there. Oh!
Not a lot of awards today, because nothing happened in this episode. But thank you all for joining us on the galaxy's favorite game show!
Wahoo! Wee-hoo!
Oh, that was it for Court Martial, which was a very nothing of a show.
Yep.
Next week, we are doing something called The Return of the Archons.
Oh. Well, where'd they go?
I don't know. I don't know at all. But they did leave. Because there's a bit in the description that says they are taking an Archon to somewhere. I think. I don't know. I know nothing about this one. I think it's one of the ones that people have heard of, but I've barely heard of this episode.
The name sounds familiar, and I think I've maybe seen a few minutes of it at some point, but I don't remember anything else really about it other than what I'm looking at description-wise right now.
Yeah, I've like used Archon as a word in some of my own like bad fiction writing from middle school because I thought it was a cool name for a leadership position. But that's about it.
It is a cool name for a leadership position. What do you mean?
Well, I guess we're going to find out what on earth an Archon is and where they went next week on Watchers of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, the crew gives in and takes up cosplay. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcasts, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.